So we have Jeremy back again, which is totally awesome. Today, the post we put out was that he was going to do on running shoes, which is true, but he's going to spend a little bit of time at the beginning just talking about some bike maintenance stuff that he thought would be useful. Yes?
Actually, I'm going to flip it just because my battery is running a little bit low. So I'll start with run, and then I'll jump
Okay.
downstairs and go to the bike.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Awesome.
just the way it worked with product flow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Awesome. So thanks, Jeremy, for joining us again, and I'll let you take it from here.
awesome, cool. Well, I mean, we've got a pretty decent sized group here from an interactive standpoint. So the first thing I'd say is, what kind of questions do you guys have about running gear or running specifically? And Lindsay's disappeared, so.
I'm still here. I can hear you. Sorry.
Okay, all right, perfect. She's just getting coffee. We just can't see her.
I was wondering, do you know much about running power meters or like the technology behind that or the use of those?
I do, actually. It's a great question. That's something that's still relatively new. And much like cycling, what they're trying to do is they're trying to create a metric in running that can give you an idea of what your expenditure is in watts. So you can actually look at it as opposed to heart rate from a watt perspective, so you can balance out your running. A lot of it was really designed mostly around trail maintenance and long endurance running for like ultra marathoners. Mm-hmm. That's really where the technology was kind of really designed around. But the applications for it are insane. I mean, we've seen guys in the IAAF that have actually been using it for track, trying to increase their power off of starting blocks. We've seen them where they're trying to increase their power mid-stride, long strides. Like you can get into a lot of different measurements around it. I think if I remember correctly, there's only 4 brands that are out there right now, but this is actually something that's going to explode. You're probably going to see upwards of 10 to 15 brands that are going to be offering power meters for running. And they're doing it in a number of different ways because of the ways that your shoes actually interact with your foot. The power meter can actually vary up with the height stack difference on your shoe, as well as just where it's actually placed on the shoe. So there's a number of different things that are being looked at. Have you used one yet?
I haven't, but is it like a pod kind of thing that you put on your shoe? Oh, okay.
Yeah. There's one that's a pod that goes on top of your shoe, and there's another one that's supposed to be a pod that gets recessed inside the instep of your shoe. Mm-hmm. And then there's another company that's actually looking at putting one on an ankle strap.
Interesting.
Yeah, great question. Actually, it's a home run right out the gate.
Yeah, I just like the like mechanics of how it works. To me, I can't quite wrap my head around yet because like on a crank, there's like that measurable force output, but with running, I'll have to use one or get one and check it out.
It's actually fairly easy because it's just an accelerometer that you really need, and it can measure acceleration both vertically as well as horizontally. And then you can put the tangents in. Where the metrics really can get messed up is the algorithm that takes that acceleration and puts it into a formula to then give you a measurement out into wattage, and how that wattage then transfers into energy expenditure like kilojoules, heart rate, or kilowatts.
Right.
They're really looking at it from the standpoint of trying put it into as basic a formula as possible to give you a metric that is consistent. But yeah, that's a big thing. It's actually a very, very useful tool for training. Come race day, it doesn't help you as much.
Yeah. I was listening to a podcast with a trail runner specifically, and she was talking about how like heart rate data in trail running can be harder to work off of because there's shorter bursts where you're uphill, downhill, whereas power was a more consistent measure.
Yeah. The other thing too that with heart rate is that as you fatigue, your heart rate is going to actually creep a little bit differently, and in some cases can actually drop. Mm-hmm. But the other challenge with heart rate is that the response time between what happens in your body physiologically from a demand standpoint. So just as an example, if we get you guys could throw your hands out in front of your computer screens, all right? And you're going to open your palm up and your fingertips as much as possible. And then I want you to make a fist and then open it all the way. Just do this, on a count of 1 second per open and close. All right. Now I want you to go as fast as possible, and you have to open it all the way. Okay. So everybody got a burn in their forearm right now that's slowing them down naturally, or not allowing you to open. So what you've just created there is hypoxia. You've created lactic acid in your forearm. The problem is that your hand muscles have sent a signal through all of your nervous tissue to your brain to then send a message to the heart to say, hey, we need more blood, we need more oxygen. That lag time isn't actually measured on a heart rate monitor. A heart rate monitor is usually going to have a 3 to 5 second lag time between response of what your heart is actually doing and what is actually physiologically happening to you. So in an ultra marathon, or even in a marathon for that extent, if you're running uphill and your heart rate is nice and low when you start up on the uphill, and then it skyrockets halfway up and you blow up halfway up a hill, then you're not going to get up to the top as fast as possible. That's why they're looking at power, because that metric, much like in cycling, is more constant. So if you see a massive spike in power early because you're overstriding or because you're pushing off too hard, then you can actually adjust accordingly a lot faster so that you don't go into a physiological deprivation.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
That makes sense?
Yeah.
Great question. Right off the hop again. Okay, we're done.
Can I just to sort of further that, I'm working with somebody who uses power running, and the part I'm curious about is like Lindsay said, in cycling, you're actually measuring a power output. You're applying force to the pedals, and whereas on the running shoe one, they're taking an accelerometer, running it through an algorithm. Are they giving you, because it still shows up as wattage and the numbers sort of line up kind of like they would with cycling, like the numbers are sort of similar. Are they doing that on purpose so that the numbers make sense to us? Or is that theoretically actually the wattage you would be pushing? Or is it just throwing out that number so that it's a number that makes sense for us?
It's probably a bit of both. In cycling, it's actually much that as well. In cycling, the way a power meter works is it's measuring the strain on a strain gauge, and then taking that measurement, throwing it into another algorithm to then spit out your wattage. Right. And all of that is dependent on the accuracy of a strain gauge, as well as how well it's molded to the materials that it's actually done or put on. Originally, when power meters came out onto the crank sets, the unfortunate bit is that they couldn't put them on carbon cranks because they couldn't get the strain gauges to actually be accurate enough. So now that they're housing them into internal units, and they're actually using accelerometers as well as strain gauges in power meters, they're actually able to get a lot more accuracy. So that number stays more constant and more flow. If you look at the original power meters when they first came out, your power file was, it took readings every half a second essentially. So it just looked like a crazy graph of just vertical lines. Now that you see a smoother graph and you can see where you're dipping and losing your power. So probably to some degree, they're trying to give you a metric that's easy to read, but they're looking for something that's going to be consistent. That's the biggest piece. Can you consistently run the same power on a track on a flat surface? And then will you see the same variation if you throw a hill in, or if you increase your tempo or your speed?
Cool.
Yeah. Anybody else have any questions? Okay, then I've got one for you guys. How many pairs of running shoes do you each have on the go right now? Just show me with a show of fingers. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so Lindsay's got 3, Jasper's got 2, and Joanne, you've got 1. Chris has 2. Alicia has none because I can't see her fingers. So this is always something that we talk about a lot in the running world, especially on the product side. How many of you guys can actually tell me what the mileage is on your shoes without logging into Strava? None of you.
Maybe on one pair.
Maybe on one pair? Okay. So does anybody know how long their shoes are designed to last?
No clue.
600 kilometers.
600 kilometers?
That's
okay. Right. That's a pretty good guess. It actually depends on your shoe. So
Until I get injured.
So just as an example, this is my high mileage training shoe. That's my mid mileage training shoe. And then these are my racing shoes. Yes, they're both the same brand for the two pairs, and that's because I try and alternate between the two brands. In fact, I try and alternate 3 brands if I can. One of the main reasons for that is because the life cycle of a shoe is typically 12 months, each company or each manufacturer will change the last or how the shoe is going to fit around your foot. And so I don't want to get pigeonholed into a specific model, and then when I go and buy the replacement for it, I get irritation or hot spots on my foot. So I always want to try and vary up what shoes I'm wearing just so that my foot doesn't get accustomed to one style. But that being said, I look for the same things in my fit. But to give you an idea and to answer the question, so this high mileage shoe is going to get 500 kilometers on it. And then it's going to get, this will rotate to the lawn cutting shoe. My mid mileage shoe is going to get 500 kilometers on it. And then this is going to rotate to my gym shoe. This racing shoe is going to get 150 kilometers on it, tops. That's it. And then this one I've taken out to 200. One of the reasons for that is that the materials that they're using on the midsole, so the midsole is the foam part, is so light and compact and so soft that it breaks down that much faster. So that's why I try and rotate my shoes in that fashion. The higher mileage shoes, that foam is going to be a little bit firmer. Because it's a little bit firmer, then I can push them a little bit further. Now I could push my racing shoes a little bit further, but I'm very superstitious with my racing shoes. So I tend to try and rotate them out. And this is something that just got habitual for me as an athlete. Now, I brought this shoe out specifically as well too, because I don't have a pair of them, but I'm sure you guys have heard of this 4% or the More Percent shoe from Nike. Mm-hmm. Have any of you guys tried them?
No.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What did you think of them, Chris?
I like them, although I have to say I got mine just ahead of an injury and I'm still working through it, so I can't really say with any certainty.
Okay. Did you notice?
They feel like you're, like when you start running, they feel different than any shoe I've had before.
They feel different in the landing or on the push off?
Talking to a slow runner. I'd have to go back and try them on again, but they definitely had more cushion and more, I felt it might be just in my head, right? Because of all the stuff you read, but you feel like you might be moving a little bit quicker or something. It feels like it's helping.
Yeah. Okay. So that shoe or both shoes, because they've actually upgraded it, is a competitive advantage. And I think it speaks volumes when you have sponsored athletes by other brands who are negating on 6-figure and 7-figure contracts to run in that shoe, and they're actually paying retail to get them. So definitely it is a competitive advantage. The challenge, of course, is how do you go from this type of a shoe? So Joanne, you're running in one pair of shoes. So how do you go from that type of a shoe to a racing shoe? The challenge you run into isn't whether the shoe is going to fit you. It's actually whether the height differential between the heel and the forefoot is going to match up and work for your body mechanic, as well as the other features of the shoe. So that specific shoe, they have a carbon plate in the forefoot. One of the reasons it was controversial is the IAAF was arguing that that carbon fiber plate was actually a springboard and causing you to actually toe off a lot faster. So this motion, when you flexed it, as you come off, the shoe would rebound, and that rebound would actually take place before your foot left the ground, and so it acted almost like a springboard. So a lot of people, when they get into those More Percent shoes, what they notice is that their heel comes up a lot faster and a lot quicker. So it brings your legs around faster. Think about overstriding in a sprint or in a 400 meter.
I'm sticking with one pair of shoes right now only because I'm battling plantar fasciitis. So I have these big bulky Hokas that I'm wearing because I'm trying to run without pain.
Yeah.
Not just plantar fasciitis.
Yeah.
What's that, Liz?
It wasn't like an acute tear.
Yes, it was. Yeah. And now it's getting better. It's almost better. But
Good.
so, because I was running in ons, and that's when it happened,
Okay.
the tear. And so I had to give those ones away and got the Hoka Bondi, whatever.
One of the things, even if you're running in one model, is grab a second pair of them just so you can alternate between the two. Again, it's just something that your foot doesn't get accustomed to the one side. When you're dealing with an injury, especially an injury like plantar fasciitis or anything on the undersole of the foot, that running shoe selection can be a bit tricky, especially as you go from a training shoe into a racing shoe.
Mm-hmm.
So you do want to be very, very specific with how you actually make that transition. So one of the ways to transition from this shoe into this shoe is to use this one sporadically midweek for your shorter distance workouts, even if it's just a run walk, before introducing it into any kind of long track sessions or speed workouts. And, those kinds of things can make a big difference. One of the other reasons that I run the two brands, and Joanne, you alluded to this, is that you were running in the on when your injury happened, is that the mechanic flow from this shoe to this shoe is very, very different. So how my heel strikes and how my toe off goes in this shoe, I actually have a little bit of support laterally. So there's a torsional support system. Whereas with the on, because of this center channel, that torsional support system is really dependent on their speed board, which is the orange piece in the middle. And this shoe actually is a lot flexier. I almost feel like I'm running barefoot in the shoe. And I know on does not like hearing the word barefoot, nor do a lot of other runners. But the mechanics of this shoe, because of the natural brakes in there, in the shoe, will actually speed your foot stride up. So I tend to use these shoes for 5Ks and 5Ks only, and then I'll use these ones for 10 to 21.
Okay.
If that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
Are you using orthotics, Joanne?
Yes.
What are you? They over the counter or are they prescribed?
Prescribed, modified by Lindsay. Yeah. Good. So they probably need a bit of tweaking, but I'll have to wait for now. Okay.
So one of the important things with choosing your shoes, be it race shoes or training shoes, is making sure that your orthotics actually interface with the shoe really, really well. Okay. If they don't, if they're squeaking when you're test running, if they're moving around when you're test running, or even just trying them on, then it's not the right fit and it's not the right shoe for your foot and for the needs of what you're looking for.
Okay.
So making sure you're taking orthotics with you, even for racing flats.
Okay.
Yeah, and racing.
Because I find like they're so heavy, they make the shoe feel so much heavier to have the orthotic in. But
I run with the Curex soles, and they are a little bit lighter. They work well for my foot type and for my foot mechanics. I'm fairly lucky because I can buy them over the shelf and I can replace them. But I also am lucky enough where I can have 3 or 4 pairs and have them in all of my shoes at once. But making sure that those are all custom fit to each of the models, that's always super, super key.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem. My pleasure. Any questions about any of the shoe stuff so far?
I had one. I went in, I tried those Nikes out just because I was super curious because there was so much hype. So I just went to the local store here, and I know the guys who own it. So he's like, oh yeah, take them for a spin around the block. And it was a very different experience than I'd ever had running in a shoe. I felt like I was being pitched forward a little bit. Like it almost felt terrible to run slowly in them. Like it just felt awkward. That's not really where I want to go with this. My question was, they also had a shoe that looks exactly the same without the carbon plate.
Yep. That's
cheaper. What's the reason behind that? So you can have a training shoe that's cheaper that feels the same way. And then why did they make 2 that look the same, but this one over here that's $200 does nothing for you, and this one over here that's $400 is the one that you want.
Yeah. There were a number of reasons. Awesome question. When you and I first met in 2005, of course you were famous and I was just Joe Nobody fanboying over the fact that you'd won Ironman Canada.
Yeah, I don't even remember meeting you. That's how famous I was.
Yeah, exactly. But in that era, racing shoes, if you looked at them, even though this is a Nike shoe and this is a Nike shoe, this shoe, the stack height of the foam would be 13 to 15 millimeters. And this shoe, the stack height of the foam would be 6 to 8 millimeters. And one of the reasons that Nike went away from that was that they were finding a lot of their athletes were training in their shoes, doing all their volume in this training model. And then they'd come to race day and they'd race really well. And then immediately after the race, they would have an injury, either a calf strain or an Achilles strain or a hamstring strain. A lot of that had to do with how the shoe was rockered. So what the height difference between the heel and the forefoot. So they call that an offset. Nike tends to run an 8 millimeter offset. Asics tends to run 10 to 13. On runs 5 to 8. New Balance runs 10 to 12, depending on the models. Adidas actually runs 8 to 15, depending on their models as well. And so Nike looked at this and went, okay, we want to make this line of shoes. So we have the shoe that you can train in, be it the Pegasus 36 or the Zoom Fly or the Fly Knits. And we want to have the same drop and transition in those shoes that we put in the 4%, because you're paying $400 to $500 for these 4% shoes. They're only going to last you 100 miles. So you want to maximize the most racing miles you can get in these shoes. And you heard that correctly. They only last 100 miles. So every meter you put on those shoes counts towards your mileage. So you want to know what shoes you're wearing, what that mileage is, so that you're not just rotating your shoes from a training load perspective, but you also want to know what your racing load is on those shoes specifically, because if you're going to race on them, the last thing you want to do is get halfway through the race and have the shoe completely break down on you. Now, it doesn't reach catastrophic failure, but what happens is that the carbon plate will actually start tearing through the material because the material softens up too much. That's why they put a limit on them.
The plate, because it's carbon, the plate would maintain its stiffness. It's the soft materials that break down.
So any shoe that uses a cushioning device, Nike uses an airbag in the center. That cushioning device is going to outlast the foam and the shoe in general, right? So your shoe is going to last 500 miles. Well, that airbag, you could actually take it out of the shoe and put it into another shoe, and it would last you the lifetime of that second set of shoes as well. It's the material, this white foam. That's what breaks down. So as that softens up, yes, that carbon plate is actually too stiff. There's not enough resistance to keep the plate in place. So the experience Nike was having in their prototyping was that the plate was actually tearing the shoe. But one of the main reasons that Nike wanted to do this is that they wanted to transition people from training to racing. They also wanted to try and give, because that shoe was designed around the marathon, they wanted to give those marathoners as much possible cushion as they could. The foam that is in that shoe is very specially designed. It is completely undercooked. If you look at when they're forming foams, it's extremely lightweight. It has a lot of air bubbles naturally in it. It is probably half the weight of what would go into a regular shoe of that size, which is dramatic. And that allows the foot to, again, flow through the running stride naturally and quickly. So those shoes are worth it. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Lindsay.
Is it just on those two models that it uses that midsole foam, or just on the next percent?
Yeah, just on the percent shoes. So there's the more percent, which is the most recent version of the 4%, and then there's the original 4% shoe. Okay. Nike is, I believe, completely sold out of the 4%, and they only have the more percents, which are in the marketplace right now. But yeah, that foam is unique to that shoe. They do not use it in any other model.
Jeremy, you mentioned at the beginning, shoes have a lifespan based on mileage. Do they also have a lifespan just based on time? Like if you bought a new pair of shoes and they're in a box and 12 months later, you're like, okay, I'm going to crack out my new shoes. Is that a bad idea, or do they?
No, the foam actually breaks down with ultraviolet light, impact and ultraviolet light. So as long as they're in a box it doesn't matter where they're stored really, but yeah, then they're fine. So there's not really that much of a lifespan. It's not like you can buy a pair of shoes and keep them in the box for 5 years and they'll be deteriorated and bad. You might not get the full mileage, like the full 500K, but yeah, those should be no problem.
Yeah. Oh, cool. I actually would have thought the other, but that's cool. And then another question, is Nike taking that same technology with the carbon plates into other sports like basketball, where maybe you can jump higher? Do you know if they're doing anything like that?
They've been very tight-lipped about that. My contacts at Nike tend to deal mostly on the running specific and the soccer side.
Yeah.
That technology was actually taken out of their cycling shoes that they were designing for Lance Armstrong, as well as some shoes that they were working on for golf.
Oh,
and that's where that technology came from.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. You're going to start seeing it from other brands. So Hoka's actually done it with the Carbon X.
Right.
And you're going to see a New Balance shoe, I believe, in the next 12 months. Adidas has a shoe that's coming that's going to be similar as well too. And they're all going to offer some similar features.
I feel like they have to. I mean, I have never seen at least on the professional racing side, an exodus from their sponsorship brands to run in this shoe. Like it's even if it wasn't actually giving you the percentage, the perception was so deeply ingrained. They did such a genius job of their marketing.
They did a genius job of their marketing, but the science behind it is actually, it's all there as well too. It's pretty impressive. Chris, I just saw your note that you got to jump to a different call here soon. Before you do, I just wanted to give you guys all a heads up. I came into the aerodynamics talk a few weeks back, and one of the things I wanted to let you guys know is that Jasper and I talked a little bit about this week, and I have actually available to you guys in one-on-ones if you have gear and technical questions, or even if you want to learn new skills around bike mechanics, taking care of your equipment. You can also do it around run. I'm happy to help with Garmin's as well, getting all that stuff set up. But you guys can schedule that through all of your coaches at B78, and I am 100% available and accessible to you guys for that. We can do it over Zoom, FaceTime, Google Hangouts, or even just the regular old phone.
Awesome.
All right.
I'll quickly jump back on. I just have to jump on this other call quickly.
No worries.
Unfortunately, I'd rather be here.
All right.
Okay, thanks.
All right. See ya. So yeah, Jasper, great questions around what's going on with the footwear stuff. And Lindsay, I'm guessing you're either on the physio side or RMT side.
I'm actually a podorthist.
A podorthist. Oh, perfect. So you probably see all these shoe manufacturers come through and at least present to you some of the stuff that they've got coming down the pike at least once a quarter.
I actually just finished school like in the fall, so I was working at a small clinic in Fernie.
Okay.
So we're pretty limited, and I deal more on the orthopedic side, not necessarily like performance footwear.
Yep.
A little bit like some of our education was in running shoes and that, but yeah, a bit.
Yep. Awesome. Joanna, it sounds like you've actually done some work with Lindsay and had an orthotic at least fit from her.
She's my daughter, so you know.
That's a conflict of interest.
Yeah. Well, I was in a practicum placement, and I was living with my parents, and my mom was having these issues, so.
Yeah.
And then the practicum Lindsay was a podorthist that had done my orthotics anyway, so it all worked out. It was all good.
Good. Well, I'm glad to hear that. That's awesome. Perfect. So do you guys have any more questions about footwear at all? Go for it, Lindsay. Come on. Ask the question you're afraid to ask all the reps.
I'm curious about like with the design of the on shoes and the midsole with the like the space essentially in between. I personally have never run in them, but like what's the difference or benefit or drawbacks to that design?
So the on shoes specifically, they were really designed around what Nike was designing back in the day around the Nike Free. So
okay, yeah.
The Nike Free wanted to take your movement from heel to forefoot and make it as natural as possible, and not focus on torsional flexibility or torsional stiffness. They wanted to let that happen naturally. There was a big biomechanical movement to move away from structured shoes that controlled the rate of pronation, because everybody thought pronation at the time, and still to this day, it's still taught where pronation is a bad thing. Pronation isn't an injury cause, or typically an injury causing motion. Overpronation and excessive use is usually what causes the injuries. So what companies were doing is they were trying to correct that in their footwear and overcorrect it to a point where now that movement was unnatural, and the movement pattern was causing more soft tissue injuries in hips, backs, quads, calves, and Achilles. And so the shoes were actually causing more of a problem. So there was this mechanic movement, and the biomechanist is actually from Canada. He teaches at the University of Calgary. And he was really looking at a lot of this motion along with Jack Taunton at UBC as to, rather than trying to control it, how can we actually let the body move naturally, but then do it within this guide box as opposed to this guide box. And that's really where On was born from. So if you take a look at the articulations in their shoes, you can actually count them. They vary up. So this shoe will have 8, and this shoe has 9 articulation points. And the articulation points are designed to let your foot flex from heel to forefoot. The big thing for them is the center channel and how that center channel is actually positioned. So that center channel is going to give you that torsional aspect. So if you're an overpronator, you're going to land on that outer heel pad. It's going to break. And then this shoe will either design to allow you roll early or late, depending on what you want to do in that pronation phase. That center channel is also designed to allow the shoe to actually open and flex centrally, which for a lot of people it's not the best if you're coming from a super structured shoe. So as an example, if you were running in a shoe that had a bottom shape, much like this, where there's no center articulation in the arch, then going to an On shoe is going to feel extremely fast moving and flowy. But the problem with it is if your foot's not ready for those mechanics and you haven't trained it properly, a lot of people will just put the Ons on and go and run 20 miles. You got to really break them in. You have to ease your body through to that system. It's like trying anything else that's new. And a lot of people, unfortunately, are not educating customers about that. And it also depends on which model of On shoes you're using. If you use the Cloud Surfer, you could take anybody out of any brand or other branded shoe, put them into a Cloud Surfer, and they'll have no problem transitioning. But if you put them into an On Cloud or a Cloud Flyer, which are 2 other different models of their shoes, and I'm sorry about the dog barking in the background, those shoes will actually more or less move too fast for the foot to adapt, and that will cause irritations or can cause problems, depending on the athlete. If they're on that brink of volume injuries to begin with, then that shoe will actually push them that much further. Yeah. And it goes for any brand. I mean, you can get into a couple of ASICS shoes that would do the same thing, like the DS Trainer or their Trivago shoe, which is their tri-racing shoe. It really depends on those mechanics. So, Joanne, in your case, because you've been running on this Hoka Bondi, which is a fantastic shoe, that is a shoe that's got a little bit more meat to it throughout the midsole. But if you were looking to transition to something that's maybe not as bulky, or the next version of the Bondi doesn't fit you, then I wouldn't steer you towards some of the ons. There's a couple that maybe I would say you could look at trying again. I would probably steer you more towards a Nike, an ASICS, or a New Balance shoe specifically. And the only reason for that is that the mechanics of the heel to toe for transition are fairly similar to what you're running in the Bondi.
Okay, because I find I need a wider toe box. So I did wear ASICS for years, and then kind of switched things around. So because they had enough room in the toe box for my issues up there, but that's good to know.
Yeah, my wife is running ASICS, and both of my sisters. I know you guys have all met Megan virtually online. She lives in Ottawa. And I think Alicia knows her quite well. I think she punishes her weekly. But they've run in ASICS for years, and specifically the Nimbus. And 3 years ago, ASICS fired their entire design team and brought in a whole new design team. And they changed all the lasts on the shoe. And the funny thing is that shoes that had fit the same for them for 13 years now didn't fit their feet. And they all had to scatter. And my phone was ringing off the hook constantly with my sisters.
That could have been why I changed. Maybe I went to buy a new pair, and then they had changed them so much that I kind of said, no, they're not nice anymore.
Yep.
I can't recall why, but.
Yep. Nimbus 19, Nimbus 20, and the Nimbus 21. Yeah, specifically. Yeah. And I'm sorry, I know that's really embarrassing.
I got a pair of Ultras.
Yep.
ALTRA.
Yep. Yeah. Ultras are they're very big on the zero drop. So if you look at the heel to 4 foot offset, they run 0 to 4 mils of offset on them. They'll use the same foams that everybody else has access to as well. Some people do really well with it. Ultra, it fit my foot well, but my mechanics, because I do actually plant a little bit more on my heel, and I played competitive basketball. I sprained my ankle on my right side so badly that I tore the ligaments out off of the external side. I need a little bit more support when I'm actually going through, because my right foot is actually a very early pronation phase foot. My left foot is midfoot, and the Ultra just doesn't give me, it gives me too much excess on that right foot. So my foot flows through way too fast, and I flip onto my big toe quite easily. So the mechanics don't work as well for me. I've run really well in New Balance. The ASICS have done well for me as well. I'm a big fan of the Nikes, and the Ons have worked very, very well for me, specifically the Cloud Surfer. So I'm also fortunate that I can run in almost anything. Almost. I've had some issues with some of the Adidas shoes in the past, and I've had some issues with the Reebok shoes, and I can't wear Mizuno. Unfortunately, they're just too stiff. So that's a lot on that footwear side. Again, if you guys want to schedule some one-on-one time, we can handle that on some one-on-one time. I know we've got probably about 15 minutes left. If you guys are patient enough with me, I will walk you through my house down to the basement, and we can talk a bit more about some bike stuff, because I'm sure you've got some bike questions. If you don't, then just tell me, and I'll save you the embarrassing walk through my bike room.
Go ahead.
No, that'd be cool. That'd be cool. Yeah.
Okay. All right. There. You can see the barky dog. He's a little perturbed because there's dogs walking in the neighborhood, so he's looking out the window, scrapping his head at him. Okay. All right, I'm going to take the headphones out. You guys can hear me all right?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah? I can't hear you. There we go. Okay, so you can see I've got my tri-bike set up on the trainer, and I've got my road bike set up on the wall. All right.
Yeah.
What I want to talk to you guys about is just some of the stuff that you guys can actually do now while we're at this stay-at-home phase. Most of us are probably training on trainers and not as much outside. So some of the things that you want to take care of and maintain to actually preserve your bike, but also just to protect everything. Anybody can see that I've got this sweat net across that? Please tell me you guys have that set up as well.
Yeah, I have a towel too. I don't have one of those.
Okay, do you have one towel or two towels?
One.
Okay, all right.
Lindsay's like, uh-oh, I only have one.
Me too.
It's barely,
One big one.
Okay.
but there's definitely some sweat dripping onto my drivetrain.
Yeah. So I always run a second towel, and I usually run this on a stool beside my setup. All right. So this towel is for wiping your face, and when you've got a mop of hair like I've got right now, that I can't pull down into a ponytail, then yeah, it's definitely for that. This is to catch the sweat that's dripping. Right? If you put a wet towel on your bike, drip onto it, and then wipe your face and then put it back down on there, chances are you're going to get some perspiration on the part. I think we all know how gravity works, right? So perspiration through this part here actually corrodes those two parts in the head tube, the bearings. So those actually are steel. And I don't know if you guys know this, but steel and moisture combined with salt equal rust. And if you get rust in a carbon frame, I have had to do this where I've had to actually take a hammer and a screwdriver to a carbon frame, and it is the scariest sound and feeling ever because you know you're going to break something. Right? So you want to avoid that. So if you're not, use a second towel. So lay one towel on top of your bike just to catch everything, and then have a second towel and put it on a stool or put it on your handlebars or wrap it around your neck. Put it up in your hair if you really want to. I'm not going to judge much, but use that second towel to wipe your face, wipe yourself down. Those are big things. But what you'll also notice is that because the bike's on the trainer, and I have a direct drive trainer, which means that my chain is actually sitting on the cassette. Do you guys have trainers where the rear wheel is still on your bike?
No.
Okay, so you guys have direct drive trainers as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is actually really easy to clean your bike because if you don't have a bike stand where you can actually pull a stand up and hang your bike off of it like this or like a portable one, then this is the easiest place where you can clean your chain. So you can use the degreaser on a rag and just run your chain backwards. And that'll help clean the chain, and then you have to make sure you lube it. Do you guys do that?
Lindsay probably does.
It sounds like you're pretty mechanically gifted.
Me?
Yeah, if you're cleaning your drivetrain.
Yeah, I try to.
Okay.
Also, I'm very fortunate. My fiance is very mechanically gifted and really likes bikes, so he often will do it for me. Because he's the best. But yeah, I try to.
Nice. I know that feeling. I know his pain all too well. So cleaning your drivetrain, making sure that you're preserving the headset, those are two of the easiest things that you can do with training indoors. And quite honestly, they are probably the most important at this time, right now. Now, if you have degreaser, you don't need much. Okay, it doesn't matter what degreaser brand it is. You just need a t-shirt or an old rag and some scissors. Okay, so you cut yourself off. Usually I start with a sleeve. And then I'll cut it in half to give myself a rag. And then this way, I've got a nice little handhold. And with your degreaser, you don't need much.
You're making me wish I kept all those crappy old cotton race t-shirts.
Yep, but you can see that little wet spot there. That's only as much degreaser as you need. And then you can actually grab your chain. Now when you grab the chain, the easiest thing to do is actually hold your hand low and then pinch the sides. And you'll clean the sides first, and then you'll actually go vertically and clean the top and the bottom. Then you want to let your drivetrain sit for at least 15 minutes and let this evaporate before applying new lube. And you need to know the differences between your lubes. So this is a wet lube. This is what I use in the winter months. This will turn your chain black. This is dry lube. This is what I'll use in the summer months. And this will actually keep the drivetrain nice and clean and silver. If you have this on your chain and you do not degrease and you just put this onto your chain, they actually will chemically interact inside the chain and break down your drivetrain that much faster. Vice versa, if you have this on your chain, you just throw this on there, they do the exact same thing. They don't like each other. Kind of like polarizing magnets. So it's always important that you do a degrease before you do a lube. And again, the easiest thing to do is you can just grab your crank and pedal around. Now, I can't do it because my shoes are still stuck on my bike. But this is the perfect time to actually clean that up. The rest of the bike for this time of the year and for what we're doing and the kind of riding, it doesn't matter. It's nice if you've got a clean frame because then it's clean. It's not putting any dirt anywhere else on your floor. And of course, it saves you time for having to clean it later on in life. But this is the easiest way to actually clean your drivetrain now. Now, in that aerodynamic talk, I talked about how a clean bike is a fast bike. Mm-hmm. Have you guys cleaned your bike since then?
No.
I feel like everybody's feeling really guilty during this part of the talk.
I know what I'm going to do this afternoon.
I haven't been outside, so.
I'm really glad that part of the talk actually sunk in.
You cleaned your bike.
Yeah, it sunk in just like the water and sweat in the head tube. Hey, you know what? I wish I'd known that about the degreaser thing. I'm pretty sure all through my racing, I just put lube on top of lube on top of lube. Pretty sure.
Someone that has worked your bike in Hawaii, I have witnessed that, Jazzy, and yes, you have done that.
I'm pretty sure I did a lot wrong, including my head tube being probably fully rusted out by the time winter was done.
So, I mean, mechanically, there's a few other things that you can do while you're at home in this type of situation or scenario. It's a good time to actually rotate your tires off. It's a good time to rotate chains or cassettes. Those are a little bit more advanced, and those ones are ones that I would probably want to handle more in the one-on-one if that's something you guys do want.
Those are ones I take them to the shop for.
Okay, so you know what? Then let's actually have that part of the conversation. How comfortable are you guys taking your bikes to the shop? Okay. What's your biggest hesitation?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh. Well, the shop here in town, the mechanics are just kind of like dudes that I took my mountain bike that I race on, which is like a pretty high-end bike, and they were like hesitant they were like, oh, this is probably going to cost like $70 to do this work. Like, oh, okay, like that's fine. So they're just not super experienced.
Okay.
So like I've gotten it back from them and like the problem that I took it in for was worse.
Okay.
So fortunately, we have a friend that lives a couple hours away that's a really great bike tech, so I usually just take it to him.
Okay. Are you in Fernie?
No, I live in Vermeer.
In Invermere? Okay. All right. I might have some contacts. Where your friend that's a couple hours away, where are they?
He's in Canmore. He runs a company called Bike Therapy.
Yeah.
And he does like a mobile, he does the bike tech work for like BC Bike Race, Trans Rockies. He was Braden Curry's bike tech for a little while when he lived in New Zealand. So
Yeah, good
stuff.
Nice to have some contacts like that. If you're willing to do the drive, then great.
Mhm.
For your road bike, I mean, you want to know what's right and what's wrong with your road bike. Lindsay, I'll throw this to you. How comfortable are you taking your bike into the shops?
Joanne.
Or Joanne, you mean?
Yeah, excuse me. Sorry, I'm reading screens.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah,
I have finally found someone that I think I trust. A number of people that I ride with take their bike to, it's called Two Wheels here in London. But I've had some bad bike shop experiences where same as Lindsay, you have a problem and you take it in and it seems like it's worse when you get it back, or they just haven't addressed the issue. But this guy, Mike at Two Wheels, he seems knowledgeable and trustworthy. So hopefully I'll be okay.
Okay. And Joanne, sorry, whereabouts are you?
London, Ontario.
Okay. I know a couple of guys that are out that way as well too, so I can always direct you to a couple of other shops depending on what your needs are.
Okay.
You guys both touched on the biggest challenge that athletes have, specifically triathletes. And one of the reasons for it is that triathletes in general, we are demanding athletes. We're performance driven. We're trying to be really good at 3 sports and not suck at one. And one of the challenges we have is that we tend to spend all of our time training. So taking care of our equipment isn't maybe at the top of the list that it might need to be. And so a lot of the times we're usually too late getting equipment into the shop. So when I ran Speed Theory, one of the most common issues we would run into is that somebody would actually bring us their bike and it was well past when it should have been in the shop. The chain is so worn down that if you put a new one on, it's just not going to mesh with the cassette or the chain rings. And the challenge a lot of athletes run into is that they lack or lose trust in who they're dealing with because they hear so many different things from many different people. And it's almost like that 1980s stereotype of, okay, I'm taking my car to the mechanic and he's going to tell me I need brakes, I need rotors, I need a who's what's it, a thingamabob, and a thing. And it's going to cost me $9,000. And I'm taking my bike to the bike shop and they're going to tell me I need brake pads, disc rotors, or new wheels, or new tubes. And it's going to cost me $500. And Lindsay, it's funny to hear that your guys are nervous about charging you $70 for a tune-up when in the city here, there are a couple of shops in Vancouver that are charging $400 for a tune-up right now.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a little bit steep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if you guys want to make this a list, but again, this is something I'm happy to talk about in the one-on-ones. And, for Alicia's camera down there, because I don't think that's Alicia.
It's Mark.
You guys might have some questions about this too, especially with your athletes, but the most common things that break down on a bike are usually your brake pads first. Okay. And if you're on disc brakes or on rim brakes, those are usually the first things that will go. The second thing is usually the chain. And if the chain gets beyond 75% wear, it starts to break down the material of your cassette, especially your favorite cog, and the chain rings up front. The only way to truly tell if it's gone too far is when you put the new chain on, you have to go and ride the bike. And when you get into that favorite gear, if it starts to skip or bounce a little bit, then you need to change the cassette. The chain rings, it's super easy because once you put a new chain on, you should actually be able to visibly see if there's a gap between the chain and the actual teeth. If there is a gap, then it's not meshing. Or if what happens, it hooks early and the chain kinks down or kinks up, then you need to replace those chain rings. But if you typically replace your chain a little bit before that, then your cassette and your chain rings should last you a long time. You are not going to go through them as fast as people think. They don't break down as quickly. And your chain is going to typically get about 5,000 kilometers, depending on what you're using. The higher end you go, the lower life you get, because it's lighter parts, lighter weight materials. And those are the parts that break down the most. The other parts that you want to maintain on a regular basis, the bearings in your headset, you want to replace those every second year, if possible. If you're doing a lot of riding indoors, and I mean a lot, if you're doing all of your riding indoors, you probably want to do that once a year. And again, it's because they are steel and there's a lot of corrosion that goes in them. If you're riding outdoors in sunny, beautiful weather, then they'll last you a couple of years quite easily. Bottom brackets.
I have a question.
Fire away.
So riding outside in sunny, beautiful weather, but what about salty air? Riding in Florida for a season.
Riding in Florida, Florida, Hawaii, anywhere where there's a high humidity level and lots of moisture in the air, then those parts will break down a little bit quicker.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. If you live in Bermuda, I don't think anybody here does, but if you do live in Bermuda, then you're going to go through those headset bearings every 6 months. Again, because of the moisture in that.
We do our camps in Bermuda, and it is astonishing. Like their bikes rust so quickly. It's unbelievable. You're right. 6 months for sure. They just burn through parts. It's brutal.
Yeah, they burn through bearings and wheels, bottom bracket bearings in the headsets, chains, cassettes. They burn through very quickly because the carriers tend to be steel, and then chainring bolts.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting when you can take a step back and look at the entire demographics of how the snow belt works versus the lower East Coast and the Pacific coast. It's amazing to see what the trends are with respect to bike wear parts. You get into Europe and people go through wheels there every 6 to 7 months because of the amount of uphill and downhill. Now this is pre-disc brake. Now with disc brake, they just go through brake pads and rotors. They're not going through wheels near as much. Who has a show of hands? Who's got a disc brake road bike? Okay, and how about a disc brake tri-bike? Okay, so sorry, go ahead, Linz.
I have disc brakes on my mountain bike. So
okay,
I'm getting a gravel bike and it has disc brakes.
Okay, good. So the disc brakes, the brake pads themselves are going to wear down a lot quicker than the brake pads would on a rim brake bike. And Joanne, you probably have much like me, you have that distinct honor of having a set of wheels for your tri-bike and sets of wheels for your disc brake bikes. So you want to make sure that those brakes and those brake pads are constantly being changed.
Constant as in how often? So I rode it in Florida for however long I was there this season, 6 weeks.
Okay.
5 times a week. Average 80 kilometers, 100 kilometers a ride. So.
Okay. Whereabouts in Florida?
Flat. Gulf Coast.
Gulf Coast. How many stoplights or stop signs would you be dealing with?
I don't know. What do you say, Ben? Not.
It's not a lot. You're not on the brakes a ton there.
No.
Okay. Bear with me 1 second.
I love how Jeremy's just taking all the factors and running it through the algorithm in his head. 8 stop signs, average vertical gain of 10 feet.
That's right.
Computing. Brake pads in 5 months and 3 days.
What was the wind direction and speed?
Yeah,
It
exactly.
was super windy.
It's Florida. It's always in your face.
Always.
So this is a replacement brake pad. And I'm going to try and see if I can get this up to the camera. So you can see the actual brake pad portion right here, the thickness of it.
Yes.
Okay. Once that gets halfway, brake pads are worn.
Okay.
Okay. So if you can't see, if you're looking down on this vertically, and if you can't see a distinct edge, your brake pads are worn.
Okay. Thank you.
And typically in Florida, our rep there would go through brake pads, and he lives in just north of Jacksonville.
Okay.
He goes through brake pads once a year. Right now, he's also a little bit psychotic. I have done enough riding with him to actually be able to say that about him. So maybe that's part of his problem. But if you ride the brakes a lot, and if you're doing a lot of uphill, downhill, then yeah, I'd probably say 2 sets, maybe 3 sets a year.
Okay. I'll have a look at them and see how they look. They should be fine. I mean, it was a brand new bike when I took it down. So.
Yeah. I mean, so those are some of the basics that you should pay attention to. Having a shop that you trust and establishing trust is huge. Don't be afraid to build that trust in a different fashion. What I mean by that is go and spend time in the shop, even when you're not actually bringing your bike in to have it worked on. Get to know the guys, get to know their names, have them know your name. If you can walk into a bike shop and you get greeted by your first name or your nickname, or the fact that you're wearing a Superman or Superwoman t-shirt and they call you that, then great, you're going to feel a lot better. But if there's trust established, then they're going to give you an honest answer every single time you go in, because they actually know how much you're supporting them, even if you're not buying something. So as an example, we get to know one of our athletes really well at Speed Theory, because the first time he ever came into the shop, he was drunk. He was carrying an aluminum 6-foot pole. I'll let you guess what time of the year it was. I will preface, it was cold. It was wet outside for Vancouver, and he might have been celebrating Festivus. We get to know him so well because of that when he actually decided to buy a bike 4 months later, we already knew his name. He came in and there was already trust established. We didn't have to try and prove ourselves as shop owners, as shop staff to this guy that we knew what we were talking about. He had already done his research and there was already that trust established. But more importantly for us, we could have an honest conversation with him. How many times have you guys gone into a shop or even to a car dealership or a running store or anything else, and they just try and sell you the most expensive thing that they've got? A lot of that is because they just don't have trust. If they can explain to you why they're advising you on that. So you guys can see I actually have a set of Zip wheels on one bike and a set of Shimano wheels on my other bike. Why do you think I have that?
You froze for a second there, Jeremy. You're frozen.
Sorry. All right, what part did I freeze on?
All I can remember is that we should all get drunk and go to our bike shop.
Good, you got the message. You get the gist. The big thing is to establish the trust. And if you can establish trust by getting to know them as people and allow them to get to know you as people, then they can give you honest advice and you can give them an honest response. You know, Lindsay, the next time that you go in, this is going to cost $85. And they shrug their shoulders expecting you to say something negative about it, then you're not establishing trust and they're not establishing enough trust with you. You should be able to walk in there and be able to say to them, like, guys, this is what needs to be done. And they shouldn't even have to tell you the price. They should just go, okay, we know that we can do the work. And that's a relationship. It's 2 ways. And if you don't have that, then you have to either put some work into it to establish it, or you have to change shops.
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, it's. I think like the nature of being in a small town, it's harder for them to find good mechanics. Maybe I don't know. Anyway, I have no problem driving my bike to Canmore to get Hazen to work on it. So that's usually what I do.
Yeah. Now you have another resource as well too, where you can now pick up the phone and call me and say, hey, this is kind of what I'm experiencing. You know, is this something I should just bother with my local guys, or should I order parts online and have my fiance swap them out? You know, those are things that I have no problem helping you out with.
Okay.
Answering those questions.
Yeah.
Right. Joanne, same goes for yourself. Yeah. Mark, forget it.
Thank you. Well, I'm not very competent at being able to do it myself, but
This is Jeremy, this is great. Thanks, buddy. I was gonna say, you know what would be a great follow-up chat that we didn't cover on the last one that people might be interested in. A while back, I was having a gearing discussion with somebody, and like gears, I find a tricky space too, because they seem to change a lot. I actually found some pictures from when I was racing in 1995, and I had a 1319 cassette on the back. Like the 19 was the biggest. So we were my easiest gear was a 3919. And the point of telling you that is to make you realize how awesome and tough I was, first of all. Secondly, just how much has changed, because the gear ratios are all crazy. And the discussion we had with Jeremy is that some of the road bikes now have a single ring up front and a big, just like the mountain bikes do. So I think a great follow-up chat, if you're up for it, Jeremy, at some point, would be to discuss gearing ratios. Like Jeremy had some great online resources to figure out gearing ratios. You know, if you're going to get a cassette, should I get the 1228 or the 1132 or the whatever? I mean, there's just so many different options. And I know we're all faced with that if I'm doing a flat race, if I'm doing Ironman Whistler, which is crazy. That might be a good one to dive into, yes?
Definitely. And actually, Lindsay, before you do a gravel bike purchase, feel free to reach out, because I'm very familiar with the gravel bikes. I spent a lot of time racing cyclocross, which it's almost the same bike.
Yeah. I ordered it already. It's a Rocky Mountain Solo 50.
Okay. All right. What gear ratio did you order? Did you order a 1x or a 2x?
1x.
Shimano or SRAM?
Probably SRAM.
Yeah, I think so.
Shimano's super new on the 1x gravel right now.
Yeah, they are. Shimano's actually done it with the GRX though, as well too. The difference with the SRAM is that they actually run a 1050 cassette, which gives you way more range for uphill.
A 1050?
Yeah.
On the back?
Like a pie plate, it's huge.
Yeah.
A 50 on the back.
Yep.
Wow. That's so weird. I had to think about that for a sec. It's massive.
Evan's bike. That's what it is. Mine's the same, just a different year. Last year. So it's a SRAM Apex.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Anyway, let's do that for as a follow-up one at some point. Next week, next Friday, we have Lindsay Corbin joining us, which will be really fun.
Mm.
So she's going to do a Q&A. I don't know if everybody, I'm sure, knows Lindsay. Anyway, she's just fantastic. One of the sort of she's definitely a veteran of the sport now. Tons of experience, been around for ages. So anyway, let's wrap it up there. And Jeremy, thanks, buddy. That was just fantastic. I really enjoyed that chat. I always learn something, which is great.
Hopefully you guys all picked up one tip, much like everybody picked up in the aerodynamic tip, which was, of course, nothing, because you didn't clean your bikes.
Thanks, we just haven't done it yet.
oh dear.
Actually, funnily, everybody that from the aerodynamics thing said, "Oh yeah, I learned something really, really important. I learned that my nutrition is really important where I place it on my bike," and that was the most common feedback I got.
I learned actually the tight clothing, that should have been obvious before, and we wore that anyway, but I think I would have been even more mindful of it back then. It feels like you could save a lot of time just by making sure that your stuff fits really well.
Yeah. But thank you guys for the time. And like I said, I'm sure Jasper will send some information out about how you guys can get in touch with me one-on-one, but I am here as a resource for you guys. Even if you're looking at buying something new or replacing something old on your own bike, I'm happy to help.
Thank you.
Thanks, buddy.
No problem. Thanks, guys.
Have a good
See
day,
ya.
everybody.
You too. Bye.
Bye.